Welcome. This is Mr. Perry. We've got an interesting project for you today. Mr. S has one entitled The Manhattan Project and the Atomic Bomb. Now, I would like you to take some notes, so if you haven't gotten yourself a piece of paper and a pencil or pen, why don't you stop the recording for a second, go get your pencil and paper, and come back. Okay, if you left, welcome back. Once again, the name of the project is the Manhattan Project and the Atomic Bomb. We're going to first take a look at the overview. The United States detonated 2 atomic bombs over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, killing 210,000 people, children, women, and men. President Truman authorized the use of the atom bombs in an effort to bring about Japan's surrender in the Second World War. In the days following the bombings, Japan surrendered. The Manhattan Project was the U.S. government's program during World War II that developed and built these first atomic bombs. Detonation of the first nuclear bombs signaled arrival of a frightening new atomic age. The Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was the code name for the secret U.S. government research and engineering project during the Second World War that developed the world's first nuclear weapons. President Franklin Roosevelt created a committee to look into the possibility of developing a nuclear weapon after he received a letter from Nobel Prize laureate Albert Einstein in October of 1939. In his letter, Einstein warned the president that Nazi Germany was likely already at work on developing a nuclear weapon. By August 1942, the Manhattan Project was underway. By 1944, 6,000 scientists and engineers from leading universities and industrial research labs were at work on the development of the world's first ever nuclear weapon. Robert Oppenheimer, a physicist, headed the Los Alamos National Laboratory, the Manhattan Project's principal research and development facility. For security reasons, the facility was located in the desert near Los Alamos, New Mexico. Major General Leslie Groves oversaw the Manhattan Project for the U.S. government. Private corporations, foremost among them DuPont, helped prepare weapons-grade uranium and other components needed to make the bombs. Nuclear materials were processed at reactors located in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Hanford, Washington. At its peak, the Manhattan Project employed 130,000 Americans at 37 facilities across the country. On July 16, 1945, the first nuclear bomb was detonated in the early morning darkness at a military test facility at Alamogordo, New Mexico. The intense brightness of the explosion's flash was followed by the rise of a large mushroom cloud from the desert floor. House windows more than 50 miles away shattered. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In May 1945, the Allies defeated Germany 2 months before the atomic bomb was complete. War with Japan continued, however, and in August of 1945, it seemed that an invasion of Japan itself might be necessary to force the Japanese to surrender. Military advisors to President Harry S. Truman warned that such a ground war would result in the deaths of tens or hundreds of thousands of young men in the U.S. Armed Forces, as well as the deaths of many Japanese military personnel and civilians. After receiving no reply to his threat that prompt and utter destruction would follow if the Japanese did not surrender unconditionally, Truman authorized the use of the bomb on Japan. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay dropped the first atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. The device exploded over the city with a force of 12,500 tons of TNT. The city had been there just a few minutes before, but it was absolutely gone, said one witness. About 140,000 people were killed instantly or died due to injury or radiation poisoning within months of the blast at Hiroshima. There is the blast and the mushroom cloud. Truman called for surrender the day after the bombing at Hiroshima. Once more the Japanese government refused. On August 9th, about 80,000 people died after the United States dropped a second bomb on the Japanese city of Nagasaki. A total of 210,000 civilians died in the two atomic blasts. In comparison, the United States had killed 120,000 Japanese civilians with conventional bombs during air raids on Tokyo in March 1945. 6 days later, after the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, the Japanese government signed an unconditional surrender. World War II was over. The development of the atomic bomb had repercussions that would continue to resonate throughout the 20th century, particularly in the Cold War. Spies within the Research and Development Facility at Los Alamos, most notably the scientist Klaus Fuchs, gave the Soviet Union information about the nuclear program that helped the Soviets develop their own atomic weapon by 1949. Was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki necessary? Truman's decision was framed by his belief that the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki would shorten the war and thereby save the lives of tens or hundreds of thousands of American soldiers, as well as untold numbers of Japanese soldiers and civilians. However, in the years following the war, and to this day, the United States' use of nuclear bombs against the civilian populations of Hiroshima and Nagasaki has had both proponents and detractors. Many questions remain about the necessity of using the bomb and its moral implications. Would the United States have acted so quickly to use nuclear weapons against Europeans? Was racism against the Japanese an element in the decision? Might the United States have exploded a nuclear bomb on an uninhabited island to demonstrate the bomb's terrible power instead of destroying two cities? Might the United States have been able to gain Japanese unconditional surrender by other means? But there was no question that the development and use of the atomic bomb changed the nature of world warfare forever. Though the bombings of Japan remained the only wartime use of nuclear weapons, since 1945, the threat of nuclear war has loomed over international conflicts, promising a level of prompt and utter destruction never before seen in the world. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to use this information. Hopefully you took some good notes, and you can use that to get through Mr. S's questions. So, hit it and quit it. Let's get it done.